Hello, my name is Aidan Stockdale with Manatee County Parks and Natural Resources, and today we're here at Emerson Point Preserve to talk about ethnobotany. So ethnobotany is the study of people, ethno, and plants. So it's the study of the plants that people would use throughout time and how they use them. Now we're sitting on the ancestral lands of the Tocobaga people, with the Timucua people to the north and the Calusa people to the south. So people have been on this land for thousands of years here at the mouth of the Manatee River, where it meets Tampa Bay, and they've been using the resources, the plants, the animals, everything around them, that this land has had to offer. Broadly speaking, we're going to talk about a couple of different categories. So we're going to talk about food that people receive from plants. We're going to talk about medicines they made. We're going to talk about dyes and pigments that could be made from some of these plants. We're going to talk about how they could use them to make shelters or structures, how they would use them to make tools, and how they would use them for transportation. So all of those different things are the uses of the plants here at Emerson Point. So let's come take a walk. Our first plant that we're going to talk about today here is this one that you may recognize. This is Spanish moss, which is neither Spanish nor a moss. It's actually a member of the bromeliad family. It's a tillandsia, so if you've seen some of the other air plants that grow on our trees around here, you've seen its relatives. Now, Spanish moss has quite a long history here, from being used as a wound packing material, so you could use this as a medicine. It's been used as dyes, and it's also been used to make different materials. So one of the most infamous was stuffing some of the early Henry Ford vehicles with this material. And unfortunately, one of the things is if you find it on the ground, it can be full of chiggers. So that might have been the nation's first auto recall. Another neat thing is during the 19th century, they would actually ret this, which means to let it rot underwater, and take the core, this kind of black fibery material out of the center, and you could use that to weave horse blankets down here in Florida, and that would go under the saddles to protect the horse. So this, while not really a food, has a lot of other uses throughout history. So this magnificent beauty is a strangler fig. Now this is a ficus tree, so you may be familiar with some other ficuses, and it has a lot of neat features about it. So as far as a food, you can see the strangler fig berries here, and here's a ripe one. This is a very rich food source for both people and animals, and you can see all of those seeds in there. So you have your starches, you have your proteins, you have your fats and oils from the seed. It's actually a pretty dense food source and would have been used both by Native Americans, but also a lot of wildlife in the area. So they could be either eaten raw or dried. It's not quite like the figs at your supermarket, but it's similar. And like I said, they pack a lot of nutrition here. One of the other things about the fig is you can see here this white sap, and I want to be a little bit careful here because it can be irritating, but this white sap is called a latex, and it has been used in various different cultures actually as a rennet to make cheeses. But like I said, it is a little bit caustic, so we do need to be careful about it because it can cause irritation to our fingers.
Strangler figs don't actually strangle other trees. They grow on and around them. So as an epiphyte, they'll start often at the top of a tree, say a cabbage palm, and they'll grow their way down and around an existing tree. Early documentation suggests that Native American tribes would have used the inner bark to make a poultice for treating sores and cuts, and may have used the aerial roots hanging down from the tree to make lashings, arrows, bowstrings, and more.
So here we're looking at a hackberry tree, also known as a sugarberry tree, and this would have been used as a food source, mostly as a dessert. There's not a whole lot of fruit on a hackberry or sugarberry seed, but the skin is very sweet, so it would be a nice treat. But as you can see, it's kind of got this warty, spiky bark here that would present some trouble if we were to try and climb this tree. So a lot of times this would be one that would actually be managed. if you had a Native American village in the area, they would actually keep the tree trimmed such that they could reach the branches and easily get to the fruits of the sugarberry tree.
The Comanche would mix the fruits with fat and roast them over the fire, and other tribes would actually use the bark to make a concoction to cure sore throats. The wood would be used to make tools and other household items, as well as used as firewood.
We're now at the base of a mighty live oak tree that once provided shade for the family that built their home up here in the late 1800s. The oak tree has an awful lot of uses, the primary one of which is the acorn. So the acorn, you see here, is a food source. Again, you'll notice, for people and animals. And we have one that's kind of cracked open already. You can see right there the meat. Now, oak trees are very high in tannins and tannic acid. So tannins are what make things bitter. So if you've ever had a really overbrewed cup of tea, you've tasted that really tannin flavor. If you've ever seen our blackwater streams that are all dark and, again, tea colored, you've seen tannins. So tannins have been used to tan hides. So it's a useful thing that people have used across time, but it's not necessarily a thing that we want a lot of to drink. So if you were to prepare, or to eat, if you were to prepare acorns, what you would often do is leave them soaking in running water for weeks to months to leach out all of those tannins. So you don't want that bitterness in there. So if you were to put these in a mesh bag and put them under a log or in the river so that water could rush across them, over time, all that tannin would soak out of them, and then you'd be able to crush them, spread them out in the sun to dry, and you'd have this acorn meal. And the acorn meal is very rich in protein. You could mash it up to make fry breads and other meals. It's a very versatile and very nutritious part of early Native American diet.
A grayish dye could be made from the bark and leaves of the tree, as well as from oak galls, which are formed by gall wasps. Hardwoods like oak and cypress would be harvested for their lumber for use in tool making, building structures, and also building dugout canoes, where they would use fire to soften the center of the tree and chip it out to eventually make a vessel.
So we're looking at our state tree, the cabbage palm, which is actually a grass. And the cabbage palm is named because of the heart of the cabbage palm. Maybe you've heard of heart of palm, is something that is to this day eaten. So if you were to take and cut off the top of this tree, which would kill it, the new growing part right at the heart, right at the top of this tree, would be used to make swamp cabbage salad or swamp cabbage stew. That's the heart of palm of this tree. It also has these beautiful fibers in the boots that were used for making rope and cordage, as you can see here, as well as the fronds for thatching, as well as more fiber that could be used from these palm fronds.
Cabbage palms have been useful for construction, from the cabins, for instance the ones at Mayaca State Park, to the chickees of the Seminole tribe. Chickees have actually been built for hundreds upon hundreds of years and is an art form that continues to this day. For instance, you can see one of the chickee structures built at Perico Preserve by a current member of the Seminole tribe. Various parts of the cabbage palm have been used for tool making baskets, ladles, and even for making dolls and other pieces of art. The cabbage palm has certainly been a valuable resource across time for the people living on this land. Here we're getting a bit of elevation as we walk up and over one of the prehistoric shell middens to find a tree that likes a bit more calcium in its soil, and you often find these in areas with shell middens.
Here we have the Gumbo Limbo, also known as the tourist tree for its peeling, red, sunburnt bark. See it flaking off here. The Gumbo Limbo has had a lot of uses, from farms in South Florida using it as fence posts, early carousels using the wood because it was easily carvable, in South America and Central America using the sap as a device to catch birds, firewood, lumber for building. One of the neat things about a Gumbo Limbo is that any of the branches that break off would just be stuck back in the ground and would grow anew, which is why they would use it to make fence rows and windbreaks along farms in South Florida. Here we have the beautyberry, another great wildlife food plant. Not so much a food for humans, although some people have made jellies and jams out of it, but it's mostly sugar, so I'm not sure that there's a whole lot of flavor there. There were also dyes to be made, and another neat feature is that the leaves, crushed up, could be used as an insect repellent. Here we're looking at the eastern red cedar, which again, little improperly named. This is actually a juniper plant. And juniper berries, as you can see here on the branch, juniper berries have been used as food and medicine for centuries upon centuries. In Germany, they're used to flavor game and other dishes like sauerkraut sometimes. You may be familiar with the flavoring of gin comes from juniper berries. The leaves have been used to make incense. The wood has been used for structures and building. A number of plants related to the yuccas, the sisal plants, the century plants, and some of the agave plants are all closely related to each other. And these were used primarily as a fiber. You can see a nice strong strand right there. Sisal plants were actually grown on a lot of early pioneer homesteads because they would provide a much needed usable source of fiber for making ropes and other cords. Here we have one of our native flash pines. These are common throughout the Southeast, and it has a number of uses. The pine needles, when dried like this, could be used for making baskets for carrying things. When fresh, it could be used to make a medicinal tea, very rich in vitamin C, that nice resiny pine flavor. And actually, part of the pine can be eaten, two parts. One is the pine nut, the seed of the pine tree. So you'd have to crack open a pine cone to get at it, a little bit of hard work. The other one is the cambium layer, and that's the living tissue of the pine tree. So you would strip the bark off, and there's a layer on the inside that would be edible. Now, that does a lot of damage to the tree, so it's not very sustainable. But if you have a lot of pine trees and you're using the land for food, it's a way to get food for you to eat. Thank you for joining me here at Emerson Point Preserve at the mouth of the Manatee River. Hope you've enjoyed our discussion of plants and how people have used them throughout time. I invite you to come join us here at Emerson Point at your own leisure. Please remember to take only photographs and leave only footprints. Thank you.